Hi, Jed from Cook Culture. I'm excited about this video that you're about to watch. We've edited it into two different videos. One is an hour and 47 minutes on YouTube, and then we've made a nice condensed one, and you're watching one of the two of those. But Stephen Muscarella and and Stephen is from Field Cast Iron Skillets. He makes these skillets, and he is extremely knowledgeable in everything cast iron, has gone down the rabbit hole and farther to learn all about cast iron skillets. And I love cast iron, and I know a lot, and I've managed them a lot, and I've seasoned tons of them, and I've helped thousands of people buy cast iron skillets, but there's still not everything that I know. So I'm fascinated in talking to him and asked him some things in which I was hoping that you may find interesting, and things that I technically found really interesting. So let's get into this. It's a lot of fun.
I'm Stephen Muscarella. I'm co-founder of Field Company, and kind of call myself the Pan Man, formally or informally, as it were. I was a maker beforehand, and I was doing a bunch of furniture and woodworking things, and I ended up getting into some leather. And so I had a bunch of buddies that I was always hanging out with, and a lot of them were into really high quality tools. And cast iron was one of those things where, you know, when you're on a trip with some friends and you stop by an antique shop, and you know there's always a few pans in there to ogle, and you can see which ones are amazing quality and which ones are, you know, kind of crap. And so I was sort of getting into that as well. And after, like, literally months afterwards, my brother and I were cooking in the kitchen. We both were living in Brooklyn at the time, and he breaks out this, I don't know if I'm allowed to say lodge, but it was a lodge. And he says, "Geez, what's wrong? This pan is not as nice as the ones that we were given by our mom." And I said, "Yeah, you know, they just don't machine and polish them the way they used to." And he said, well, why don't we?" And it was one of those, like, I think any business that ever starts always has that moment when you realize that it's for real. And it was just so naturally like, yeah, we're going to do that. And I said, we could. So cast iron also is referring to how it's made, and it's cast in a sand mold. So I always break this down like, basically a sand mold is something that is created at a foundry by pressing sand together, and you end up with like a cube of sand. And if you were to open it up, you would see a pan like sort of carved out inside of it. And from there you pour the molten iron in there. And so and the molten iron goes into the sand. It like instantly kind of turns the sand into clay, so it holds its shape. And then you've got this cube with hot molten iron, and once that begins to solidify, you knock away all the sand, and bam, you've got a pan, basically. We've developed this incredible technology where the sand is recycled throughout the foundry. It's poured down, you know, from above, and then these two machines just knock the sand together right in the shape that you want, because you buy a tool that presses the sand just so in the shape of a pan for example. And then it kind of just spits it all out toward the end to the point where, like, at the end you basically have your casting, and then you got to clean it up and make it nice from there. Yeah, so I mean, basically, when we first started out, it was like, hey, we really want to make a pan. We're calling up foundries, and they're just telling us, they're laughing at us, telling us no, or telling them, you know, saying, oh, we could do it for $100. And I'm like, geez, that just doesn't sound right. And so when we stumbled upon our Polish professor that we reached out to, Marcin, you know, he's like, yeah, we can do that. We just got to figure out what the right, you know, combination of metallurgy is to do it. And so that's what I ended up doing, is flying over to Poland and spending a week with him. And we made a bunch of sand molds, and we were trying to get really smooth surface finish. And yeah, when it came to the melting day, you know, we're throwing the iron in, we're throwing the carbon, all that stuff, and then there's this little packet of ingredients called inoculants, and those are all like the specially, his like scientific formulation for how do I make a thin casting, that it's going to flow really well through the mold and make it and be successful. So by making sure we have pure, really good iron underneath, we're able to machine it really well. So
okay. But what in there is what makes, like when you pick up one of your pans compared to a lodge pan, it seems like a lighter pan.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And in there somewhere in that scientific experiment with that professor, is that where you were able to find that solution to the lightness, to the quality?
No, I would actually say it might even be the opposite, because at that point we might have been trying to avoid machining the pan and just make the casting itself really thin.
Yeah.
And when we came back to America and we wanted to use the green sand casting process instead of some of the more expensive ones like investment casting or wax casting, basically we couldn't get a foundry that could make it thin. And so what we ended up needing to do was find a foundry that would make it thick, but when we put it through the machine shop and cut away all that material, what was underneath was really high quality.
Okay.
So we take away the weight. We actually cast a 8.5 pound pan, and then we take away 4 to 4.5 pounds during machining process.
Wow.
And if you were to try to do that with a lodge pan, you would blow up your machine because the pan would crack apart, or you'd hit all sorts of hard spots in the iron, and that would chip all the cutting tools, and you couldn't do it. So
great. So the number 8, the first pan that you guys made.
Yeah.
This pan actually came from your original Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
It's got the wheat on it.
Pardon me?
You got the wheat?
The wheat?
The little wheat mark next to Field Company.
On the backside?
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Sorry. I was looking at the logo. But yes, the little wheat, yeah. So I don't know if anybody can see how close.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that came from the original, which is my pride and joy. I just absolutely love this pan. And it blows my mind how well this pan works. And that's why, it's so interesting to me to have this conversation with you today, because, I've been selling cookware for a long, long time, and I've used a lot of cookware, but I'm still not 100% sure why I love your pan so much. So that's why, like, in the technical geeky part, that's why I ask you, and when you're standing with this professor, like, I want to uncover that, like, why, when I've used the highest of quality cookware in the world, I've used French made 2.5 mil copper, I've used all different types of old antique casts, I've used from high quality DeMeyer to All-Clad to all the other brands, and this one performs so incredibly well for me. Mm-hmm. So hopefully I will become enlightened by the end of the conversation. So I appreciate your time on this. Lids that fit pans. And it seems that mostly lids and American skillets are not really a thing, but was there a time?
Yeah. I mean, when you flip through those old cast iron cookbooks, or like the vintage cookbooks, there's one by David Smith has a Griswold and Wagner, and a Wagner and Griswold book. And it kind of shows you the history and what they should cost if you see them vintage. And I mean, lids are there. I guess they don't really they don't really last as long, I guess, or maybe people drop them more or something because they're obviously not as prevalent. We have one underway.
Okay.
For the number 8, and as soon as we get one done that we like, we'll have to make a call on how many we fill out. Whether we fill. Well, the short answer for us was it needs to be lighter, smoother, better handling, and they got to look good. They got to look good. They got to look timeless. You want to reach for them over and over again. That's kind of like the key to making a really quality object for us. To give a little bit longer answer, I'd kind of compare some of the cheaper stuff to, and kind of talk about what's going on there and why you might want to spend a little extra money and get it right. And so basically, like, the most available cast iron is not that expensive because it's been cost engineered in manufacturing to get it to be as cheap as possible. And that means like trying to get rid of as much human interaction into this object and eliminating non-essential steps. And so that'll give you a rough, heavy, kind of uninspiring object with what I call a candy coating seasoning, which is kind of that shiny, dark seasoning that you see with a lot of these pans. And which also that kind of flakes off eventually because it's not really the right way to season a pan. And so I don't know, when you take all of that, when you take all that human interaction out, you end up with something that has no soul really, or less soul. I mean, I think most cast iron, it's hard to take the soul out of cast iron, but there's a way to do it with more care. And so that's where we come from, which is, for right when our castings come out of the foundry, we're inspecting them for defects that would be not acceptable. Not only are we grinding off some of the bigger chunks of metal that are attached, we're also taking them to a belt sander and having a human being is touching that up and making that nice. And then from there, we're going to go to our machine shop. And like I said, it's going to start off, we have pretty heavy casting, but then we're going to cut out all that weight. And we did a lot of testing to see what was a good weight for the pan in terms of cooking performance, but also in terms of a weight that you would that didn't really register as this is a heavy thing that I don't really want to pick up. It needs to be something that you can just reach for and not mind that, or just not think twice about it really. The other thing that we get with our machining process is we're able to create an extremely flat cooking surface. And that, obviously that's a huge benefit for heating up, and flat and even thickness all across. Like we don't have big thick chunks here and there. It's like, so the pan, even though cast iron doesn't heat that evenly as a rule, if you keep it even, it's going to heat a lot better. So we get it nice and flat. A big part of what we do is we get our seasoning right, and you can see in these pictures, like, our pans are dark when they arrive to you. They're not super dark, but they're dark because we've gone through a seasoning process where we are really focusing on getting our oil into the cast iron as opposed to on top of it, which is what I would differentiate from the candy coated type seasoning, which is really thick, but is not super well bonded to the iron. And so we do a lot of work to make sure we get it into the pan, and getting build up on top is sort of in the user's court from there. So I would say, again, I would go back to our seasoning process and the way we treat our surface, and we've really gone to great lengths to try to create a pan surface that will accept seasoning, but still hit that smoothness factor. And that is actually a pretty delicate line to draw. So if you've been using any of the other modern cast iron manufacturers that make a smooth surface, you'll notice that they have like this copper seasoning, and basically if your pan's not getting black, you're not really building up seasoning. I would say, obviously we take extra care to get our pre-seasoning right, and that's what I'm talking about when I talk about getting our seasoning into the pan. Like, that's going to get you off to a really good start. Mm-hmm. And it will give you things for your seasoning that you're developing to bond down to nicely a lot faster than a pan that's actually too smooth, essentially. Or if a pan's rough, I think what ends up happening is there's feedback you get there, which is like, this is rough. Rough things stick, right? Mm-hmm. That's just like a common sense feeling. I think if you were to put a crap load of oil on your pan, you could get that rough thing not to stick. But simply that feedback in the design is going to make you believe that it sticks, and you're basically going to create that result because of that. I guess I wanted to step back because I think this is one of those questions where I can go directly into a technical answer, but really I need to kind of do a little 101. So yeah, our pans come pre-seasoned with the 3 coats of grapeseed oil, and that seasoning is like it's the buildup of a coating that forms a barrier between your food and the raw iron. And the better you get that barrier, the less sticking you're going to have. So if we were not to do that, your pan would come to you silver in color, and you'd have to do it yourself somehow. But the way we go through it in our factory, we got some tricks up our sleeve that you couldn't really do at home. So, the first coat is considered more of a primer coat, and that's all about building up a layer that really is well bonded to the iron. And then, you have another coat that goes on, and it's just additional. And then the third coat is something we do to try to give it that aesthetic, a little bit of shine that you want, and a little bit more protection, we're throwing these things in a box and then putting them in a warehouse, so they need to be able to kind of survive some elements. So 3 is, if we eliminated one of those coats, we'd probably end up with a little bit more brown of a pan, and we're trying to get you going a little bit on that.
Okay.
I mean, I cook scrambled eggs in my pan, and I don't have any problem. I don't have any sticking or anything. It's Teflon is designed to kind of be idiot proof, and I think one of my hopes with people getting into cast iron is they take a little bit more accountability and a little more interest in their tool and what they're trying to create, and learn a little bit about how it works. And if you do that, which basically comes down to understanding the amount of heat you need and the amount of fat you would use, you can get that performance. And it's just, so yeah, I'd say there really, in my opinion, is there's really no place for Teflon by the time you get through all the chemicals that are going into it, which are going to come into your food, and the fact that once that coating wears off, you've got something going into a landfill. It's I don't know, man. One YouTube video where I can show you keep your temperature low and slow, use a bunch of butter, and here's how you make scrambled eggs. And by the way, this pan lasts forever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The machining process is basically where we get most of that smoothness to come from. And so that's, we're cutting away iron at a very, very slow rate. And by doing that, we create a practically smooth pan in that step. And I would say, so 95% of our smoothness is happening right there. We also put the pan through a vibratory tumble, which will smooth out that, make that softer as well on the inside and the outside.
Sorry, can you say what that was again?
A vibratory tumble is a
okay, yeah, sorry. I thought I didn't understand what you said.
It's a machine that's just shaking, and it's got a bunch of ceramic media, and it's a little bit wet, and you throw a pan in there for 30 to 60 minutes, and it comes out with sort of anything that was sharp sort of blunted down. In the early days in 2014, when I was just trying to restore cast iron pans, and at first, as a woodworker, my initial instinct was to sand them. So I'd sand all these pans nice and silver and nice and smooth, and then I'd put them in the oven to try to season them. Again, they come out copper, and it's like, what the heck?
Right.
They're too smooth,
and everything's flaking off. Yeah.
Yeah, if it's too smooth, it's really hard to prevent flaking. I don't know. I've not developed a seasoning on a pan that's too smooth. Traditionally, the things that you avoid acidic food when you're getting going. So
only at the beginning of the seasoning process avoid acidic food.
Yeah, I've been able to do everything in my pan once I got a nice seasoning going. Really, I pretty much deglaze after every meat protein I cook now, and
Okay.
I still don't know if I'd let a huge batch of tomato sauce simmer for hours on end, but
Okay.
Once you got a nice seasoning, it's pretty much going to hold up.
Awesome. And what do you deglaze with?
Lemon. What's that?
What do you deglaze with?
Yeah, either some sort of vinegar or wine, or sometimes some lemon. Okay. I think we kind of touched on this stuff. You're just not going to get the experience that you're talking about with your pan. It's going to be something that it's just another object in your house, and you use it when you need it, and you put it in the cupboard otherwise, and it's going to feel bad in your hands, more than likely. It's going to be super heavy. Seasoning will likely fail. It just won't have a personality or anything to it.
Okay.
And that coating is bonded to itself more than it's bonded to the pan.
Sure.
And that's why I call it this candy coating. And so the minute something gets underneath that, you're going to have some flaking issues for sure. Mm-hmm. It mattered to us. Yeah. It mattered to us from just an overall feeling of heritage. This is an American-made product. It's got a deep history here, and I don't know how you can avoid. I don't know how you can be true to that heritage and make it in China. Okay. The other thing is, I have all these Chinese pans that people are making, even the ones that are trying to do it well, and there's something about them. You can just tell that they're made in China. There's so many little things that happen at a foundry that can affect the quality of what you're making. Mm. And so to have that chasm between you is like, you just doesn't, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen on a quality level. I go to my foundry a couple times a year, and I see what's going on. I meet the people, and that was important to me. So yeah, it does matter that it's made in the United States.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like we did as good a job as you should do with cast iron. Like if our pans, we hit about the number 8, we average about 4.33 pounds on our number 8. And that is specifically the weight that we wanted to get cooking performance that we want out of the pan, but also to be something that doesn't really feel that heavy to you in the end. We found that after about 5 pounds is where people start to go, damn, this thing's heavy. Yeah. You need even lighter than that, then I think either you got to go with a smaller cast iron, yeah. or you have to go to probably a different kind of cookware. I know carbon steel definitely can benefit from that, but neither carbon steel nor cast iron, once you go too thin, is going to have great cooking performance unless you've got a really nice stove. in the last year I've been playing around with chainmail, and because I had a couple hunches, and it's turned out to be, I think, the absolute winner when it comes to developing seasoning on your field pan as well as cleaning it up. So because what I found is the chainmail kind of knocks anything that's stuck on it, kind of knocks it down from the top instead of kind of picking it up from underneath and chunking off the pan. So you're able to sort of wear down anything that's stuck on into the pan a little bit more.
Okay. And so when you talk about chainmail, you're talking about something like that, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Something, yeah.
Okay. So that's a chainmail scrubby with a piece of silicone on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find the application of the chainmail on the surface is just absolutely stunning. It's just truly bizarre how it polishes as you clean. And I can do anything. I can have any sort of mess. Even sometimes if I, don't get a little bit of water to soak right after I've cooked and it's really truly baked on, the chainmail just, it's stunning.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the great thing about the chainmail is you don't really need to remove everything. If you blend it all, if you kind of blend it, feather it all into the pan more or less, that's fine, And then I don't know, the real secret there, though, that to me is that polishing that you're talking about. You're basically you're semi scraping the pan just a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, texture. You want a little bit of texture for that seasoning to hold on to.
Yeah.
And by doing that every day, you're really setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, no, it's stunning. I hold it and put my fingers over the edge, and then I use my fingers to feel the pan, as I'm bringing that polish around. And then once I feel like I've got like any of the chunks off, then it's good and ready to go. So once I've done that in the sink, running water, no soap, what do I do with the pan then?
Dry it on the stove, put it on some heat, dry it out, and then put a coat of oil on it. For straight up seasoning, grapeseed's great.
Yeah.
But saturated fats don't season terribly well. Don't form bonds with each other, and that's what the polyunsaturated fats, which is the grapeseed oil, cross-links with itself.
Okay. And what about using something like an olive oil or avocado oil?
Yeah, the monounsaturated fats. So I kind of that's when I talk about fat, saturated fat, oil, butter, ghee, lard, coconut oil. Monounsaturated fats are like your olive oil, avocado oil, sort of the traditional ones you hear about. And then the polyunsaturated fats would be your vegetable oils, and most seed oils tend to have that profile. So yeah, I mean, I love Italian cuisine, and I cook a good amount of it, and olive oil is what you use. And I think one thing I use for just a standard in terms of health and cooking and flavor is like, if it's been used for a really, really long time and they're healthy people in that culture, then I think it's okay.
Yeah. But what do you think for the optimal seasoning of what's going to create the best, most successful seasoning?
Go to the grapeseed oil, do that.
Right.
We have a good amount of material on our website.
Okay.
Fieldcompany.com in the journal section.
Okay.
And we also provide some recipes that we are sort of like layups in terms of getting you going.
Yep.
I think there's some Facebook groups that are kind of fun. That if you can get through the weird folks and focus on the good ones, the fun ones, then that's great.
Right. So I guess there's a good point to make there for people that are interested in cast iron and start to kind of poke around looking for information. There's some people that are fairly obsessive about cast iron online. And is that a resource, or is that something to kind of ignore, people that are?
I think the thing to ignore is that there really isn't any one way to do it right. I have prescriptive techniques that I stand by and believe in and think are probably about the best thing I've come across. But it's also specific to the way I cook, what my stove is, what utensils I'm using, all this stuff. So um, you just got to watch out for anyone who thinks that there's only one way to do something, because that's just not true.
Right. Okay.
And those people are just obnoxious.
Yeah, good point. So I guess to help people that are listening to this understand that is that you will see in the comments section of a lot of people that are doing good work to help teach you how to season. You'll have people that will be like, no, 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 absolutely not. There's no way that that's going to work. That's all bad. It's all wrong. And really, really harshly negative. And it can throw people sideways because they're like, oh, well, I thought I was doing it right. Now all of a sudden I'm not. So I would support that, is that, you know, if somebody is getting something successfully done and it's working, stick with it.
Right. Yeah. If I was going to say that Jeff Rogers has a lot of good stuff, culinary phonetic. I feel like he has a pretty nice level head and kind of talks you through some stuff nicely. So
yeah.
I think one of the most surprising things to me was that we needed just about every nickel of that 1.6 million we raised on Kickstarter.
Right. So can you tell me just a little bit what you mean by the 1.6 million first, to put it in perspective?
Yeah. So to kick off Field Company, we'd spent about a year developing our ideas, our designs, and learning as much as we could. And eventually we decided that like the best way to see if we had a business that actually could hold water was to launch a Kickstarter campaign and see how many of these things we could sell and see what happened. And so we went about and made a nice little campaign, and quickly on it started getting a lot of good traction. And
that's where this came from.
Yeah, exactly. And so you know, I think we kind of had a thought that we really only needed $30,000 to get the tooling to start this thing going, and so we figured that would be a good amount to sort of ask for as a minimum amount.
So that was the goal. The original goal was 30,000 US.
The original goal was just let's get 30 grand so we can at least keep going with this project, you know. Yeah. And you know, internally we were like, well, hopefully we can beat Finex, which did like 200,000. So right. We were kind of well, hopefully we can do that. And but then it just sort of catapulted off on us, and we ended up with a pretty viral campaign. Yeah. Ended up on the front page of Yahoo. And so long story short, we sold 15,000 pans and raised $1.6 million. Yeah. And then we really had to get to work.
Yeah, I think it took, what was it, about a year? I think I can't remember how long I waited now. It seemed like an eternity then because I wanted the pan so bad.
I know, yeah. Well, it took us. Our first foundry was a fiasco, so we had to find a second foundry, and then I spent 8 months in the Midwest learning engineering documents and everything I could do to get the quality where I wanted it to. And in the end, in retrospect, I'm actually really proud that I believe we got all of our pans from that Kickstarter done within a year.
Okay.
Of our Kickstarter.
Yeah, good on you.
Which, I think we were a little more bullish that we were going to be faster, but I think reality set in, and the thing that we set out to do was not to create a mediocre pan. It was to create, an heirloom quality object, and that not only took time but lots of money.
Well, I think you have, that the pan is just absolutely spectacular. You guys were awesome in your communication during the time of, when you paid your money down and got the pan. There were several updates along the way, and you guys showed your commitment and your professionalism. So I appreciated it.
Well, it'd be funny to make lids with that Dutch oven.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to say that.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we're working on those in tandem. You know.
Okay, great. And what kind of sizes are you looking at?
Well, with all this, with anything new, we always have to kind of go through a pretty intensive engineering phase. So, we're starting off with a number 8 Dutch oven.
Okay.
It'll be 4.5. No, is it 4.5 quarts? Yeah, 4.5 quarts.
Perfect.
I'm really pleased with it. It's a very pretty object that we've managed to create. And so there's going to be some challenges on the machining step there that we're going to have to overcome, and probably end up going back to the drawing boards for other sizes to make sure that we incorporate everything we learned from there into the next sizes.
Okay. And what kind of time frame are we looking at for that?
Oh boy, it's always a crapshoot. I mean,
but like sometime in 2020.
Ideally.
Fair. Yeah.
So we've got our website, we've got an Instagram account, and if you want to go see what it was like 4 years ago, you can go look at our Kickstarter. Cool. All that information is still pretty valid. And
I try to point people towards that all the time. It's pretty interesting, watching that journey with you guys. It's still kind of sitting there frozen in time. It's
it's kind of fun. I reread it like a year ago, and I was like, all this is still 100% true, and really nice. And we didn't drag on too much. You can read Kickstarters that look like they're this thick book or something. Ours was just like boom, 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 boom.
We're incredibly honored to carry your product and to show it to people. People come out of the woodwork. People that don't even know us. They find the product and they come and they're just obsessed with the pan. And we run out of number 8s and number 10s before anything else, and people are just like, they're so sad that they've made this pilgrimage into the store. We don't have the product. So we're constantly, making sure we're getting more of your guys' product, because it's fantastic and it sells very well for us. People love the product. Sorry.
I would have to give you a lot of props for that. I think you've really been a great supporter of ours, and appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's fun. I really enjoy it. But something that made me really excited was last Christmas, because we started carrying the entire line, I think kind of late fall last year in 2019. The amount of Christmas presents that were being bought from husband to wife of a field, number 10 or a number 8 was stunning. That was the thing. Like, oh, this is what my husband wants. He just wants these 3 pans. It's all he wants for Christmas. It's like, and these are like, 60-year-old guys, right? That all they want is a field fry pan. Yeah. And that it definitely showed me that there's, I'm convinced, but I'm not always picking winners when I'm partnering with suppliers. But when people were coming and so emotionally bought into a field pan, it really showed me, hey, this is a pan. People are seeing what I see, and they can really associate with it. And so from a retailing perspective, they are a joy to sell because people love them so much. They're so emotionally invested into them. So I appreciate all of your insight, because, I want people to be ultimately successful. The last thing I want is somebody to buy a pan of one of your pans and not be happy with it. Right. And as you pointed, it is always user error. And so, if you are somebody that's listening and you're not being successful with it, it's on you, but please reach out, reach out to us, because there is a way that you can be successful. I found, and I touched on it a couple of times when we talked about, a lot of times people are using olive oil to cook with. And I find olive oil is actually the thing that people are the least successful with, because it just does not solidify. And it's constantly creating stickiness and gumminess. And so I try to push people right away from fruit oil altogether and just towards seed oil, and simplify that conversation. Seed oil to cook, to season, and fruit oil to finish. And I find from a retail perspective, from people trying to simplistically understand at a retail level, that's the easiest conversation to have, right? Because I find the nuance of in there, it gets confusing. Right. And so it's like, use grapeseed to cook with, grapeseed to season, and drizzle the olive oil after the fact, or drink it out of the bottle, however you want it.
That's just always the challenge is in a retail setting, you're kind of on the hook for being prescriptive.
Very much so.
If you want to teach someone something, you need to go back to principles. Yeah. I think our goal in having the chainmail and the brush and the seasoning oil products is really to we're not trying to say this is the only way, but we're going to say if you want to come under our protective wing, this is it.
Right.
Here you go. This is what we do.
Yep.
And that's something that we've always wanted to do from the beginning as well, which is, sure, there's people who already like cast iron, and there's all these other folks that if you can just get them over that hump, you could really show them something, get them something special into their life, basically.
Cool. And I agree with you. It is a hump. I find there's that aha moment when people finally get how to season. You can struggle, and then it's the one thing that they're not getting right. The heat's not right, the oil's not right, something's just not right. And once they get that right, then off the races, and they're so incredibly happy.
Yeah.
Right. So I really do appreciate all your time. And this has been, it's interesting. I really hope to get some little bits. I don't have that complete answer of why this is the best pan that I've ever used. Like, I'm not sure exactly why. It could be the emotional attachment I have to it. The journey that I've been on with you from the beginning has been really fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. Being involved in the Kickstarter campaign and following along and seeing you guys get up and going and more information coming has been a lot of fun. So I do recommend people to go back to the beginning and take a look at that. But it is just stunning how incredibly well it works. So even if I don't have that technical answer of exactly why your surface is so much better than others, or not, so much better is probably a little bit harsh. It is that much better that I really noticed the difference. And I, enameled cast iron cookware, carbon steel, other brands of high quality cast, they all work incredibly well, but yours just seems to have that edge that makes me so happy.
Glad to hear it, and I hope you can lean into a little bit of that magical, mystical feel after this, because I think that is literally the only element that you're probably missing at this point. Is just a little bit of belief in, just that goodness behind it.
Yeah. I guess I'm always looking for that technical aspect, because when I'm sitting there talking to a customer in store and I'm like, oh, you just got to believe it's magical.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's a $250 pan, and you just got to believe in the magic. But people are, though, and that's what's fantastic. People are coming in. They're buying. Like I said, they're coming in cold. They may know of our brand in the marketplace, but they may not be a customer. And they come in and they're buying. They could easily buy a $50 Modge 10-inch pan, or they're buying a $200 Canadian pan, and they're buying that over and over, and they're so incredibly happy. They buy a chainmail scrubby, and they're super happy. So the return positiveness that we're getting from field pans is just amazing, right? So it's such a feel good product to sell for us. So we're extraordinarily ecstatic to be a partner of yours, and we thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and you're doing a great job getting us out there and telling our stories, and I'm glad you're a fan. Feels good.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to the new product, and I look forward to talking to you again really soon.
Yeah, same job. Nice
awesome.
Chatting with you.
Thanks, Steve. All right, man. Take care. Thank you.